So the moment a newbie driver is going to climb behind the wheel of a car, the insurance premium is going to go up. And the other consideration is if the car is in your name as a parent, make sure that you've added your son or your daughter as another driver.
This is our feature, Wheels on Wednesday, Cars for the Youth. And George Mienie, the CEO of AutoTrader, I don't think any parent would be happy to hear their child revving a car like that.
Good morning, Martha. Thanks for having me. I had two thoughts when I was listening to your intro. The first is, at our age, and makes us sound old. I'm heading to 50 at the moment. So at our age, 19 and 20 is young. It's flying the nest. It is young in our terms. And I think the kids of yesteryear. Well, when we were kids, when we heard somebody was 50, we thought they were old.
George, I think you're old. I'm nowhere near 50, but I definitely think a 19-year-old is a baby. But okay, let's not do that. George, when parents are saying, my baby, because even if you're 19 and you think you're an adult, to your mom and your dad, you're still a baby. They're concerned about your well-being. They want to gift you this car, but their idea of what constitutes a nice, safe car is not your idea of what constitutes a nice, safe car. I remember my brother's got a son, and they had a raging argument because the son felt that the father could, buy him like a BMW, M Sport, whatever. And my brother said, in your wildest dreams, like your wildest dreams.
So I think a couple of considerations there. The first thing is the newbies to the market, the 19, 20-year-olds must consider a couple of things. That I think the main kind of like more experienced and older of us kind of have got the stripes for this. And the first thing is what youngsters don't realize is that if your parents give you a car, do you realize that there is a 20% donations tax that they could have to pay for every rand over 100,000 rand that they gift you the car?
Really?
Yes.
So if they're buying a 200,000 rands car, it doesn't require this 20% tax, but above that, yes, it does.
Above 100,000 rand. So you're, in terms of the tax laws, you're only allowed to donate 100,000 rand per year.
So on that extra 100,000 rands, 20% tax.
Paying 20% tax. Yes. So I think the reality is, the youngsters don't understand. The youth, they don't understand the multifaceted implications for getting a car, and that's just one of them. And we're going to go through many others in this talk. But 20% tax, that's levy. So if your father buys you a 400,000, 500,000 rand M3 Sport.
He's not. Don't worry. My brother's a Scrooge.
Yeah. The donations tax could be pretty heavy.
So when we see these students at varsity who are cruising around in, A class Mercedes Benzes and yes, BMW 3 Series cars and Audis, their parents have had to pay a top up on that.
Well, yes and no. So, I could buy a car that is in my name that I own, and my son could use it.
Okay.
So that's an option to I suppose
avoid that.
Well, tax evasion is illegal, but you could potentially just you own the asset. It's when you give that asset away that it becomes a bit of a problem.
Okay, so your child could cruise around in a car in your name, but just tell his girlfriends, this is my car, and feel very...
Well, I'm pretty sure even if they cruise around in your car and it's yours, they're going to tell their girlfriend that it's theirs.
Okay, this is an education. I was not aware of this 20% tax on a donation. So that's the first thing. So buy it in your name so that you can at least try to save some money. What else are the considerations parents need to make?
I mean, if you're gonna like give advice to your kids so that and they're going to have to fund the car or part of the car, right? And especially if you're going to finance the car, there are financing criteria that the banks levy on us, and in general, if you buy a 200,000 rand car, the required salary is going to be approximately 20,000 rand per month, and it probably doesn't hurt to explain that to your to the person that you're giving the car to, or your son or daughter that you're buying the car for, because do they realize what kind of income one has to have in order to own a car of 200,000 rand? Wanting and salivating over a BMW M3 Sport at 500,000 rand, ask your son or your daughter, do you know what kind of income you have to actually own that car? You're at 200,000 rand, you have to earn 20,000 rand a month. The general rule of the bank is that the banks, the financial institutions, want you to spend no more than 20% of your gross salary on vehicle finance payments.
Okay. So this is also, it's not just about the car and the spoil. It's also teaching young people about the value of money. And there is a concern that, especially in a city like Johannesburg, and the more affluent parts of Johannesburg, this is an inequality issue, but in the more affluent parts of Johannesburg, the parents are so wealthy that these children never have to think about it, and so they demand and they demand and they demand because they just think, there's just this wellspring of money where they can just keep drawing and drawing.
Well, I mean, I think Bill Gates put it well. He's not passing on his wealth to his kids. Why is he doing that?
So that they can learn to go and earn their own money.
They can go and learn to create value in the world, because I think the moment one gets everything placed in one's lap, you don't really learn the value of creating that wealth.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. And in the BMW M Sport example, some of that might be going on. And so we've got to educate our youth to say, do you realize what it takes to actually buy a car for 200, 300, 400,000 rand?
Okay. So let's talk about the more sensible and reasonable parents who say, yes, my child is going to university, did really well at matric or first year, and I'm ready to give them this gift. What are their considerations outside of just price?
Okay, so the considerations are going to be the other costs on the car, because you're going to have to insure the car, right? And an experienced driver like yourself or myself with many, many years of driving are going to more than likely be seen as a lower risk to the insurance companies.
Okay, yes.
So the moment a newbie driver is going to climb behind the wheel of a car, the insurance premium is going to go up. And the other consideration is, if the car is in your name as a parent, make sure that you've added your son or your daughter as another driver. Because if they have an accident and suddenly you haven't thought about, oh, hold on a second, I'm the primary driver and no one else is allowed to drive, and I didn't tell my insurance company that there is this 18, 19-year-old that's just got their license driving the car, you could have a situation where the insurance company repudiates the claim.
Oof, okay. And given how recklessly they drive, that's a highly probable scenario.
So then, a couple with that, performance cars, right? So if you take a young person that is inexperienced, and it's got very little to do, I think, with age. It's got more to do with, it comes with age, but it's more to do with experience. Somebody that doesn't have experience driving, you could get your license at 50 and still have an insurance problem. Okay. Or should I say, a premium problem. So yes. It's the fact that age just kind of correlates with experience. Yeah. Then the other consideration is, the moment you buy a high performance car, right, your insurance premium is going to go up even further. So the insurance company looks at this: inexperienced driver, high performance car. What is the risk here?
Yeah. Okay. And what are they considering when it comes to inexperience? You haven't been on the road for too long. You probably won't know how to react in a crisis in the rains, those sorts of things. Yes.
So with experience comes reaction times, comes, understanding how the car performs on the road. I've seen it a couple of times where, if a young person doesn't understand the performance of an M3, for instance, goes into a corner, doesn't know how to handle the car and turns it upside down.
Yeah. Okay, so let's say you've got a reasonable child who's reasonably, who can handle themselves reasonably well in a car, and you're ready to gift them a car for their independence. What would you be considering? If it was my child, my biggest concern would be safety.
Yes. So safety is a big consideration. It has to be a big consideration. I mean, we've touched on insurance. Let's get back to running costs and fuel costs a little bit later on. But in terms of safety, there are two things that your year mentioned. The biggest thing that your year mentioned is the NCAP, which is a new car assessment program.
Okay.
Now, that's where they crash cars, and you get the Euro NCAP, where they give the car a starred rating.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the higher the starred rating, the better the car's performed in the NCAP.
Okay.
Okay. But the NCAP is not regulatory. So what that means is it's not legislated. The cars coming to South Africa don't have to have a certain minimum standard when it comes to NCAP. What they have to comply with is what's called the National Regulator for Compulsory Specifications, NRCS. Loretta, do you remember the SABS?
Yes, the standards, the Bureau of Standards.
Standards, yes. So the SABS...
Is that how old I am?
We're not going to go there.
Okay, go ahead.
So the SABS operated this area until about 2008, and then the National Regulator for Compulsory Specifications, the NRCS, took over from that point. And what the NRCS's job, this is a regulatory framework. What the regulatory framework is designed to do is to have minimum standards in cars and equipment on those cars that come into the country or get built in South Africa. Now, most of those regulatory requirements align with European regulatory environments. Okay, so we have those kinds of standards. So, and they cover things like braking systems, seat belts, child restraints, mirrors, glass, lights. And so there's a minimum standard. And South Africa's minimum standard is pretty good because we are built on the European standard. Okay. We're not built on any other country's standard.
Okay. So your child is probably going to be safe in a safety standard approved South African vehicle because it complies with international best practice. I've heard that a color of a car can also impact on its safety. Is that true? Sort of because of the glare of the sun or something?
Yes. So insurers, and you know, you won't get to this data, but it has been said, and anecdotally, the color of the car does change the insurance premium slightly, because certain cars are more visible or certain colors are more visible than others. You know, and so yes, certain cars are safer. You can imagine a grey car. I'm not saying grey cars are bad. I'm just using it as a grey car on a rainy day against grey clouds would probably be worse to be seen. So colour does play a part, but I don't think it's the biggest deal.
Okay. And then let's talk about the make of the car, not necessarily the brand, but is it better to start your beloved child off on a hatchback so that they get a feel for a car, a feel for the road, and then with their own money, a few years later, they can graduate to a sedan or whatever else it is they want?
Hatchbacks are very popular. Sedans are losing popularity or losing traction around the world and in South Africa. So people seem to be migrating, by and large, both young and old, towards SUVs. Mm-hmm. Hatchbacks are the closest thing to an SUV for a young person. So I would say yes. The idea of a boot has kind of sort of lost its appeal with the growth of hatchbacks and SUVs. And plus, SUVs are hatchbacks are more versatile. You can take the backboard out, you get more room and more space in the back of the car. You can put the seats down most often, and you don't have a restricted area called the boot. So I would agree with you that hatchbacks are a better buy.
Earlier on, I said that Gen Zs and to some extent the millennials are very conscientious consumers. They ask questions, they challenge you. You know all about it. So, would Would that mean that generally, with the growth of electric cars, given that mindset, young people are likely to say to their parents, if you can afford to buy me a car, if you're buying me a car, I want it to be an environmentally friendly vehicle, probably consider an electric vehicle?
Yes, for those youth that are environmentally focused and can do the kind of environmentally friendly thing financially, because at the moment electric cars are expensive all over the world, even in South Africa. They're expensive. One of the most cost-effective or cheapest electric vehicles in South Africa is the BMW i3, the BMW i3. I almost said iX3, but that's the brand new one. BMW i3, which has been discontinued. Now, the BMW i3, the entire car is made from recyclable products.
Oh, wow.
BMW really did a good job. I love that car. I'm sad that they're discontinuing making it, but they're making new ones. So if you climb into that car, even the dashboard and the seats and the carpets are made from recyclable products. So you can find cars that are environmentally friendly, that have got biodegradable, not synthetics, biodegradable product that they're built with. But the biggest challenge at the moment isn't those things. The biggest challenge at the moment is how do we reduce coal consumption and fuel consumption. So the car could be made from anything. The biggest problem is coal and fuel consumption. If we can reduce that, I think a secondary concern is what the car is actually made of.
Okay, so just the carbon emissions just to be reduced. We live in an age of e-hailing, taxi hailing, and many young people move around like this, especially at nighttime. They just feel it's safer to club together in a group, get into an Uber and go where they need to go. Is that sort of creating a mindset that says, why do I need a car in the first place for my child?
So car ownership versus car usage hasn't really gained as much momentum as I think we'd like it to have in South Africa, and it's actually curtailed since the lockdowns and the coronavirus, because people feel a little bit more isolated and safe in their own shell of their vehicle. There is still the usage of companies like Uber and Lyft and etc., but it's not as big as I think it was pre the lockdowns. It's actually moved more towards what we're finding is that searches by younger people have increased, not decreased, and I think it's as a result of people wanting their own independence. I want to be able to leave a party when I want to leave a party. I want to be able to go when I want to go, rather than being reliant on everybody else. Because if I'm going to travel in a group of people inside an Uber, I'm going to be reliant on when they want to.
Yeah, and network as well, your battery's dead, etc. Okay, and finally, George, you were talking about running costs. So we want to teach children responsibility. So what is the responsibility once they've actually got the keys in their hands and you say to them, listen, be conscientious, how you use the petrol, where you drive to, etc. What's that conversation?
Yeah, so at the moment, with petrol prices being 24 Rand per litre, it becomes a massive consideration. Suddenly, versus a year or two ago, it costs you double the amount in fuel to drive anywhere. If you just think about that. And I think the South African youth are pretty switched on when it comes to what they search for on AutoTrader's platform, because what we're seeing is that the top 10 cars that students and young people are searching for are 220 to 230,000 Rand, which is really in the sweet spot. And if I look at the list of cars on that top 10 search list, the Fiat 500, the Ford Figo, the Hyundai Grand i10, the Kia Picanto, Peugeot 108, Suzuki Swift. Suzuki Swift is one of the most fuel-efficient cars on the road today. So it seems like the South African youth are already in that mode of reducing running costs. But it's not only about the fuel costs. When you buy the car, what kind of a service plan does it come with? Does it have a service plan? Because that could cost you in the long run. What is the insurance cost one car to the other? Fuel cost, as we've spoken about. What is the maintenance cost if you're going to buy a second-hand vehicle? Is there going to be maintenance and other running costs? So I think there's quite a lot of considerations, and we call this total cost of ownership. Try and calculate the total cost of ownership, not just on the ticket price of the car or the finance or the insurance, what other costs are there involved, and divide that into them. So what I do is I say, take a 5-year view, take the cost of the car, take the cost of the fuel you'll use over those 5 years. You can calculate the mileage you do. Take the cost of the insurance over the 5 years, and any other costs, service costs over a 5-year period, and then take that and divide it by 60 months.
And you'll see what's the value.
Compare that number to every car on your list.
George Mienie, this has been a lovely conversation. And yes, 50 is still young. It's gorgeous, actually. So best wishes to you. Thank you so much for joining us. He's the CEO of AutoTrader.